Welcome back to Behind the Counter Pharmacy and Beyond. I'm your host, Solomon Abuede. And if this is your first time here, this is the podcast where real stories meet real business lessons. We go behind the counter, behind the scenes of pharmacy ownership, leadership, and innovation to uncover the successes, lessons, and turning points that make businesses succeed or fail. In the last episode, I sat down with Ashley Cohen, a respected contractor, board member of the National Pharmacy Association, and a chair of Community Pharmacy West Yorkshire. We explored the reality of the new pharmacy contract, the landscape and leadership within pharmacy, and why pharmacy owners must not fall into the trap of doom thinking. If you missed episode 11, I strongly recommend that you go back and give it a listen. But today, we're stepping into a different but just as powerful direction and a different conversation. Tohidul Islam is a name many Locum pharmacists will already know. As the founder of the Pharmacist Cooperative, he's built one of the most trusted support networks for locums in the UK. Tohidul joins me today to talk about how he went from the shop floor to building one of the most important support networks for pharmacists. Welcome to the podcast, Tohidul.
Thanks for having me.
So, Tohidul, I want to go back to the very beginning. Take us back to the moment where you realized that local pharmacists needed a stronger voice. What were you seeing and experiencing at the time?
So I qualified in 2005. And at that time, they were pretty decent. I started off, I signed a contract with Lloyd's, put my hand up as an employed pharmacist, relief pharmacist. Did my first month as a locum actually after I qualified. I went back and joined Lloyd's as a relief. Didn't like it, went back to locuming. Next few years, it was really good. I kind of wanted to work. Locuming was a good demand. Working environment was pretty relatively decent. It was compared to now, it was good days.
The good old days.
Pharmacy great again. And then around 2015, 2016, I started noticing a real shift. Actually, it started much earlier, but then I got regular work with one company and didn't really keep up with what was happening in the local world much. In 2016, that's when I really joined social network groups on WhatsApp. Even before that these things even existed. I thought you used local agencies or your own contacts to get work. So now people were using WhatsApp groups to post shifts and get locum shifts. I joined one group. It was great. There's a lot of locums there, shared knowledge and looked at rates and shifts and stuff. And then I could see that a lot of the locums wouldn't speak up to contractors. And there was some friction there. So I asked my friend, can you put me in? Are there any other groups? So he added me to a few more groups. And I started noticing a pattern there where pharmacy owners would post shifts or multiples would post shifts, agencies would post shifts. And if the locums wanted to negotiate, there wasn't the option there. You can't ask. And no one talked about rates. And I'm thinking, why are you not talking about your rates? How would I know what the market rate is if you don't tell me what rate you're on? Do you know that what rate you just accepted is better than what's actually out there? There's a market research. Locums are supposed to be businesses. How are we not utilizing the business, the very basics of what it is to run a business is to understand what's out there, what competitors are charging for your product, for their product, for a similar product, right? And then we set up a group where we just basically everyone decided there's going to be a minimum rate to post on this group. Anything that's below this rate, because there was this constant back and forth, we're just going to ignore those or not post it here, and we just keep peace, right? That lasted for a few months, and then some contractors said, "No, we're not happy with this. We will tell you what rate we're going to be putting on." So I just said, "Look, no, that's not how it works. We as a group decided these are the basic group rules that everyone needs to follow." That just didn't work. How? So then I set up my own group and I said, "Look, you know what? I'm going to set up my own group on WhatsApp. I will set some basic rules that everyone needs to follow. And if you don't like it, don't join." Simple as that. You don't have to join our group. You can have your own group, you can have your own friends, and you can do whatever you want. So anyway, I would open a group for Northwest Locums because I'm based in Northwest. I'm based in Manchester. Well, I was at that time. And the group within a day, I think at that time, there were 252 people could join the group. Okay, so we opened up another group for Northwest. That got filled up. Okay, another one. That got filled up within days. And everyone liked the idea of having they preferred a group that was managed by a locum or an agency. So at the time, the agency said, "Look, you guys can't negotiate. What you're trying to do, just stop negotiating, stop messing around, and we'll let us post whatever you want." I said, no, I've set the rules, follow those, or read the group rules, go somewhere else.
Did you have agencies in this group at the time as well, or was it just locals?
Agency, local. I want to keep it open to everyone because as a local group, one, we want to stick together and learn from each other. One of the main reasons why we locum is we want work. If you follow the rules, you can come and join. Majority of the contractors follow the rules. That was okay. There's always one or two bad apples that really mess it for everyone. We just used to kick them out. And then I made a bit of a name for myself within the sector that, I'm kicking out these contractors, I'm kicking out these agencies. And then a lot of other locums are saying, we're not getting paid by these companies. If I'm going to pay, let everyone know in these networks, in this area, that this company isn't paying your wages for months and months, so we don't work for them. So that was a bit of a hit. And then same with agencies. There was some agencies that were really, really dodgy, to put it politely. And I said, yeah, well, you're in the group, share your knowledge, share your feedback. Let every other locum know that this certain agency isn't looking after you or looking at you. So one of the owner of the agency got really angry with that. So no, you gotta take this on. I said, no, we're not taking anything down. People are free to leave their own views. And I knew the agency quite well over time. I've worked for a while. And things got really heated and he threatened me. He said, I'm going to come down. Okay, come down. I'll have a cup of tea ready for you. And obviously, I don't know, he still hasn't turned up. I'm waiting for the cup of tea. And then this is that news spread quite rapidly and everyone was like, oh, we need a group. We need some kind of collective just run by pharmacists or locums, looking after the interests of locums. Because it was got to the point where at one point the rates were down to 16, 17 pounds an hour. Why are we even working for those rates? And who's working for those rates?
What was the minimum rate you set at this time? So when you mentioned, because
at the time we didn't want to set any rates, but the average market rate most people agreed was about 21 an hour.
Okay.
Obviously, that was like the base that everyone said, look, anything below that, we don't want to work for that rate.
Which I think is reasonable, by the way, for a little while, or was reasonable at the time, 100%.
You've got a master's who's running it, who's managing your pharmacy.
Yeah.
You want to ensure that the people that you employ to run your business, to run your pharmacy business, is one, looked after, both in terms of the working environment itself, but also they're paid fairly so they feel like they want to come and work for you.
Yeah.
None of us go to get up in the morning and come to work because we think, I'm just feeling generous today. I'll do some charity work and go to a pharmacy and work and take the risk of checking these prescriptions, right? We don't do that. We pay our bills with that kind of a attitude. So we want to make sure that the work that we do is of high standard and that we're rewarded for that work. So I then said, look, these groups are getting quite big. We had about 3 or 4 groups from Northwest, and then we made one for Northeast that got filled up. Midlands, London, Scotland, Northern Ireland, every group was getting filled up, and it got to the point where it was quite difficult to manage all of these groups by volunteers. And all this. So the other thing was people wouldn't speak up because your mobile number was exposed on WhatsApp, and if you spoke up, you'd get blacklisted. So we decided we needed to find a platform where you could remain anonymous, and it was big enough that I could put everyone into one place. So I had 5-10 different groups. So that was easy to share knowledge, share what rates people are working for, any bad actors, bad agencies. And someone said, Telegram's really good for this. It's anonymous, it's built with anonymity in mind. You could have, I think at that point, you could have like up to, when we first started, it was up to 2,000 people you could have in a group, which we thought was huge because I think our whole network had about 1,400-1,500 at that time. So it moved 2017, I think it was December. I moved everyone over to Telegram because everyone said, look, how are you gonna do this? So I had one agent say, look, mate, you might as well give up. You're never gonna get all the locums in one place. I was like, is that a dare? I'll give it a go. I think I'll give it a go now. Now that you dared me, I'll give it a go. So I said, yeah, look, I'll do it and I'll show you.
Yeah.
And so I put it on. I think within days we had over 1,000 locums on our pharmacy lounge, and then we built the regional groups. And from there, we've grown now to, I think, over 11,000, 12,000 pharmacists on the network.
Yeah, I think I was checking. You've got about 10,000.
20 to 30 different groups that we've got. In 2018, we decided we need an actual organization structured that works for the pharmacists, and it's built and built in a way where the power isn't centralized. Everyone has a voice. So the best option, we look for all different business models and decided a cooperative model is probably the best one for us because it gives everyone a vote. So all our professional members can decide where they want to go with this, where they want the organization to go, what they want us to focus on. We run regular polls. It's worked out really well. So yeah, from there we just basically grew. And then I think I read an article from the same Locum agency that said you can't negotiate rates, just give up. You're not going to be able to bring locums together. Year 8 on chemist and druggist, they were interviewed and they said, "Oh, yeah, it looks like locums are actually negotiating nowadays. They're pushing back on the rates." I'm like, yeah, we can do it. No, when you get together, we can do it. So yeah, I proved my point. And obviously, since 2025 now, we've been running for 7 years officially. So we've achieved a lot in that time. A lot of people said, the people that said you couldn't do it, you can't get anywhere with this, you're not going to be able to achieve anything. We've done a lot. Managed to get thousands of people together, raise a lot of issues. People know, I think within a year, 27, 2018, I think if you look at the chemist and druggist, the salary survey they do for locums, and then around 2018, it started coming back up, and then from there, and every year was just going straight back up. To me, I think that shows the power of people coming together and sharing knowledge and working together to show that, look, we're not setting the race. The moment you start sharing the knowledge and you know what other people are charging, then you know what you're worth in the marketplace. As an individual pharmacist and a locum, or even if you're employed, we were collecting data for employed pharmacists as well. And we were sharing that in a graph. We're collecting a locum rate data, and then we're sharing that in a graph. Showing, look, around the country, the salaries and the hourly rates people are charging. Yeah. Here's a baseline for you to go off. So you're not just shooting in the blind saying, "Oh, I want X amount, I want that, or I want this," and the contractor saying, "Oh, no, you can't do this." No one ever says, "Oh, yeah, I'll give you that one." Everyone haggles a little bit. Yeah. Everyone wants to see how much they can push you. But if you know where the base is, right, and you know what the average rate is around the country or wherever you're working, then you know what to charge. Yeah. And if employers also know, okay, this is the average market locum rate now, fully independent rates given by locums I've worked in the past in those areas, and it's an average of thousands of reviews. Yeah. So it's not just 5 or 10 people in one place saying, "Oh yeah, I'll put the rate up extra high just so that in the rates go," but it is taken from thousands of people, thousands of reviews. So it's transparent in that sense. And that's one of the reasons, I think, the reasons why people really trusted the data, locums, but trusted data because there was just so much data out there that was put into one place. And there was a team of us working together to make sure the data is cleaned, it's anonymized, and it's accurate as I put on the graph. Okay. It's easy to see and read. So, so that was how we started off, really.
Yeah, that's an interesting journey there. And I think a few points sort of just listening to you there. In 2015, 2016, you're setting a minimum rate of £21 an hour for the locums. Now, the classic saying...
I think when you clarify, we weren't setting the rates. It was more of a rate filter in that...
You're sort of advising and suggesting.
It was just so much arguments back and forth between contractors and agencies and multiples and locums. Yeah. You know what? I don't want to get into a social media group every day and see loads of messages of people having back and forth and arguing and fighting over £1 or £2. Here's a rate that everyone agreed to in the abide by. Anything less than this, post in another group. No one's got an issue with that. If you want to post this rate or anything more, here's a group where you can post it. Yeah. Right? I
was just heading towards almost there's two sides to every story, right? And I read a lot of stuff about Tohidul, right? The Telegram groups and the, Twitter conversations and locums. As you know, Tohidul, I'm a pharmacy contractor myself. And if you're however you guys have come up with that rate, £21 in 2015, 2016, I think that's perfectly reasonable. And that's not, I've got to say, the narrative that's out there in terms of, that was then, things have changed around COVID, and there are always multiple reasons I will delve into what the contractors feel or think around it. But incidentally, I've always said this, I'm a contractor with a bit of a locum head on. I have locumed myself, and I genuinely believe that as pharmacy professionals or healthcare professionals, even whatever we're earning now, whatever we're paying now, whatever the locums are getting today, I don't think is right. I think it should be more than we are currently getting paid. And I'm saying that as a contractor, and a lot of contractors might listen to this and think, oh, what is he on about? But ultimately, I think as professionals, care professionals, we've gone to university for 5 years, experienced and what we're expected to do, I think it should be more. About 4 years ago now, I think 5 years ago, we launched Workfly, which is a locum and agency management platform where pharmacists would come in, post your shift, locums will come in, get your shifts, and we don't get involved. We don't speak to the pharmacies. It's an online platform. You come in there, you've got the choice to say whether or not your shift is negotiable. So you can turn on negotiation or turn it off. So we encourage you to give the pharmacy a ring and have a conversation about your rates. And I think that's the way it should be. I don't think there should be this concept of the middleman who is benefiting. I think there's sort of loads around there, but just listening to you there saying some agencies weren't happy with negotiations and stuff, I can see why this really kicked something off.
I literally had agencies, owners call me up saying, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Let me tell you why you can't negotiate. I had one guy, I think it was post Locum. The owner called me up 20 minutes telling me why I can't negotiate, why I shouldn't be negotiating, why those rates are too high. And this is like 24, 25 at the time he was saying it was too high. And my response was, thank you very much.
I mean, I qualified in 2008 and we were getting £25 an hour then. You know, a lot has changed since then, but we're not miles off that. When I speak to a lot of people outside of pharmacy, they're really surprised at how much it is the pharmacies are getting paid. But like I said, I think it's just one of those things is sort of, you know, can they afford it? Can they not afford it? But certainly having a voice for the locums.
It's £25. I mean, 2005 compared to taking place into account, about £45. So people that are on £44 haven't had a pay rise. They're essentially on the same rate as 2004, 2005.
Do you think pharmacies can afford to pay £45 an hour to locums today?
Okay, so this is where we need to be. We look at the pharmacy as a business. We think pharmacies should rely on NHS for its income. And that's the traditional model. You get your prescription, you do your dispensing, and you get paid. But should we have to rely on the NHS?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if you look at Boots, whatever you think of Boots as a company on the way they treat their pharmacists, if you look at their business model, majority of it comes from over-the-counter sales or other healthcare services. They're not purely relying, I mean, I think 10% of the income comes from NHS. If they were able to do it, it's not just some Lloyds did really well through the OTC sales. Wild is doing well, the cooperative doing really well. There's a lot of other pharmacy businesses, independents, that have shifted significantly from doing purely NHS to also doing private services and other services. So when you say, can we afford to, I think that what we need to think about is, why aren't we paying our staff what they're worth? We have a trained healthcare professional in our pharmacy. You know, I've seen messages of people saying, you know, pharmacists, if they're not doing anything, why can't they just sweep up? What's wrong with them putting the bins away? Why can't they put the stock away? I'm like, are you literally going to pay someone 25, 30, 40 pounds an hour to put your bins out? That's stupid. Really? I can't process this, because how are you having someone with a master's in pharmacy who can actually do a lot more for you, who can services for you, who can do clinical services for you and bring you more money so you can pay them fair rate and you can make more money yourself? But no. Let's have them put the stock away because of the, hire dispensers to do that. Or we're paying them, they might as well do it, right? There is that attitude within some pharmacies as pharmacy owners. And this is a bit I can't understand. Like, why aren't you utilizing your pharmacists? So I think that's the question. Not that can we afford to pay. Why aren't we using these pharmacists to do more services when there is the opportunity, when we should be thinking of pharmacy as a business, as a healthcare business? Every pharmacy will have easy 10,000 patients on their PMR system, right? And they will have needs. They will want other services, right? Why aren't we running surveys or speaking to a patient asking, what do you want? Do you want us to provide any other service to you? You can go to local businesses. Can we provide any services to your employees? You want the vaccination? You want the flu jabs for your staff this year? We can do that for you. Go to a nursing home. we can do the vaccinations there, do those. So there's so many ways of so many different services. And now obviously you've got private weight loss service, right? Or recently a lot of pharmacy owners started picking up. A lot of them just rely on PGDs and they're not even utilizing IPs, even though there are thousands of IPs out there. But they're not even willing to pay them a fair rate for that one either, because they think, well, why should we? I've seen companies who are saying, just sign off the prescription, we'll pay £30 an hour. You're making £200, you're charging people £200 a prescription. The cost is about £80 for an injection. So you got a decent margin there. You can pay your pharmacist a decent amount as well. You don't need to be stingy.
No, but I think that if you sort of, let's use the numbers that you've given there, you're making £200 an hour, or sorry, £200 per prescription for these weight loss injections as a guide price, and you're paying somebody, I think you said, it's £80-90. You're sort of looking for the injection. What you're sort of suggesting there, it's important to sort of be clear about this, the balance view. What you're suggesting there is you've got £120 to play with. So why only wanted to pay £30 or £40? Is that fair?
No. So what I'm saying is some companies, they want you to just sign off on as many questionnaires and as quickly as possible.
No, we shouldn't be doing that anyway, because that's against the GPHC guidelines.
Yeah, but they're still doing it.
Right.
My view is, look, you've got a pharmacist there. Bring your patient in, let them talk to the patient and sit down with them and do a proper service where you're looking after your patient, and trying to understand what their needs are, and then provide the right level of service, rather than going for this as many in there as we can, get as many signed off questionnaires as we can, and pump out these. Nothing everyone does it. There are bad apples, but I've seen a lot of pharmacies now that are doing it properly. I think I've a long. David is a good friend of mine. He's one of the founders of IPCM, and we have regular conversations. He's been on that network for years. He's supported a lot of locums as well. Conversations around doing service properly. If you do, then one, your patients will come to you. Your business will flourish because you're looking after your patients and the people in the area. If you read some of the reviews that he gets on Google, and I think he's one of the contractors I would look up to as an example. Like, this is what you need to aspire to be like, and who understands healthcare business, who knows how to price his products and services, and who remunerates his staff and looks after their staff really well. And they then in turn look after his business really well. And this is where I want more people to get to. It's not like I have something against contractors. A lot of our members are, some of our founding members of the TPC were contractors, are contractors. A lot of the professional members are contractors. A lot of the locums said, why are you letting contractors onto our network? They don't like us. It's not us versus them. A lot of these contractors were locums at one point. Ultimately, to get the locum and contract thing, you're all pharmacists, right? We're all pharmacists. So it isn't us versus them. It's us working with them to ensure we're both looked after and the working conditions good. We're both making money, and we both go home at the end of the day nice and relaxed. Ideally, that's where we'd like to get to. I've never seen this as an us versus them. When I speak out, I'm not speaking out against the majority. I'm speaking up against the bad apples. Apples is what gives everyone else a bad name. Just like I get a call from contractors, I've had this local your network, and he's just been sitting in the back of the pharmacy playing on his phone. I was like, what did you do about it?
Yeah.
Did you speak to him? Did you ask him why he's on the phone? Did you give him the word? Did you make him feel part of the team? It has to do. And if you're going into a new pharmacy and you don't know what's happening on the day, or you've not got the task, that maybe he's not been told where he needs to be for that day. Going in just for one, you've never been there before. It takes you time to get used to where things are and what's expected. It's a two-way street.
I appreciate that, and I think it's always sort of going to be balanced. Like you said, there's always going to be sort of the locum side, the contractor side, and there would always be conversations around both. But ultimately, I think the key thing which you said there is, forget the contractor and locums, we're all pharmacists, okay? And at the end of the day, that's what we need to sort of remember, and we need to almost sort of remember that there's more that unites us than divides us, and I think that's the way that I like to see it. So the Pharmacist Cooperative began as a space for connection, but it sort of suddenly very quickly evolved into a platform for power. How did that shift happen?
I think when you get a lot of people in one place, it becomes powerful. It wasn't that we were attempting to make a powerful organization. It wasn't that I was trying to get power or become a powerful voice within this sector. It started off as bringing people together, the locums and contractors and educators and entrepreneurs and bring them all together in one place. Telegram, each group can handle up to 200,000 people. I was looking, well, if we can get 60,000 pharmacists in one place, that's powerful. So the platform has power when everyone's in there together. You can have different voices. That's better than everyone saying, yeah, we're all saying the same thing. We'll agree with what you've said and we will do exactly what you said. That's not how it works. You know, I have had locums who said, we don't want any contractors in here, or we don't want the GPHC here, or we don't want the RPS here. I've had contractors saying, you know, why you got all these dodgy locums? You've got some bad apples in here. I'm like, yeah, they're bad apples. Unless they're saying something unprofessional, criminal, they have a right to speak. And as a platform organizer or owner, whatever you want to call it, we need to allow people to voice their opinions. Where there is someone saying, you know, we should be on minimum £60 an hour and not less, to contractors saying, you guys aren't worth anything, you guys should be on £10 an hour. Disagree with you both, but you have a right to your opinion, the right to say what you think is right. And then it's up to everyone else to decide, well, I don't agree with either of you guys. I think it should be the free market and let people choose what they want to work for. And as long as both parties agree to it, then that's the rate, right? That's how the free market works. As long as you're not manipulating, or he's not manipulating anything, he's not lying and you're not lying, and you're both being transparent and professional about it, I don't see a problem with what rate they accept.
You sort of mentioned there about sort of obviously the being open and the freedom to speak. You obviously open up a space for reviews, discussions, and even whistleblowing, Code Circle, right? And I just wanted to ask, has any contractor, any employer or a big chain ever called you to, or reached out to you to challenge a review, or to even say thank you for a positive one?
Both. So I built Circle kind of my own back. I looked at the way what people were saying and the need for anonymity, need to review a pharmacy without facing backlash or being blacklisted. Being blacklisted is pretty common by a lot of the pharmacy owners. Certainly, I'll do it all the time. Tesco does it a lot. As is notorious for it, and so is that other company. What's it called? They've only got a few hundred, but they're really bad at the way they treat the lockups. So I thought, you know what, we need something which is separate from TPC, which allows people to anonymously leave reviews, just like Glassdoor, but something that where I can make sure that they're not saying anything defamatory and the data is gathered and done properly without and getting into trouble. So I think this is right now, we're on the third or the fourth iteration of the social network.
And what change have you seen, whether it's about pay, safety, or even just the mindset that sort of having Circle has really had on your locums or your people in your network?
So just to get back to your original point of, have I had any contractors to me? And so one of the main ideas behind having an anonymous review, I think it allows people to speak up more freely, right? Now, obviously, there's two ways to look at it, but the way I was looking at it was, if I can allow a locum who's scared of losing, being blacklisted, who's got bills to pay, who's got, a mortgage to pay, but he or she's working in a really bad environment, and they need to highlight this without the fear of repercussion. I need to create a system which natively allows you to leave every review anonymously of your choice of putting your name to it. It then allows you to be more free and open about what you say and honest about what you say. I think even this is a few months ago, when there was a locum on the group that I talked to quite frequently. He's really nice chap. And locum left a really bad review. And I said, look, mate, I think you've got a problem in one of your branches. You might just want to have a look at it. He looked at it and he goes, right, I want to get rid of that right now. I need you to remove that review because it's completely lying, that whoever that person is. I'll start on have this fine. I was like, probably not the best way to deal with it. With all due respect. Maybe just thank the locum for leaving the review and highlighting the issue. Maybe there is an issue that you may or may not be aware of. The way I would see it is a number of people are saying the same thing. You may have an issue that I'm aware of, right? That's I think is probably one of the best ways to look at that. I think is a better way to look at it. In that, if you've got 10 people saying you've got a problem in one of your pharmacies, you definitely have a problem. one person saying got a problem, but then another 9 says, no, it's a really great branch. Maybe they were having a bad day, or maybe they got a grudge, whatever it is. But 9 good and 1 bad, I think you're fine with that one. But if you've got more and more people leaving bad reviews, it's better that you improve your business and the working environment than you try and defend to. So it's a good way for you to gauge how well your pharmacist is doing fully independently.
So you see it as it's a neutral, fair game platform. Locums can come and put reviews on. And what you're saying there is, instead of kicking off the reviews and not liking what the locums have said, it's actually an opportunity to help you highlight and maybe fix a problem that you may or may not know exists. And on the circle, can pharmacies or pharmacy contractors leave a review as well about a locum?
No. So we looked into that. We've had a lot of requests for that as well from a lot of contractors. And I said, look, you can try that, but they can. When we spoke to some lawyers, employment lawyers and stuff, I said, look, if you do that, the locum they can potentially take the employer to court, and they'll then have to prove that what they said about the individual is true. On the flip side, I could see that they could say, well, could we take a locum? But the locum does review about a business, not about the individual.
Not about an individual, yeah.
So,
and I think that again, there's the legal part to that, and you've looked into it, but sort of looking at it from a neutral perspective, you can almost see why the contractors' backs will be up. Because
no, I could understand that. Yeah. Like a lot of these contractors are my friends. So to me, it's like difficult to have that conversation. They're like, maybe just have a word with that person. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe there's something there. And if it's anything defamatory, I can take it off, or you can respond to it, to that review. But don't make it personal.
Yeah.
It makes you as an employer look bad because you're attacking. It's like you can't take a critique, right? You don't want to be, you think you're so right that you can't be criticized. But if you look at a review that for, say, when Boots or any of the big businesses, you did them bad review, they'd be like, you know what, thank you for leaving that review. We'll look into it. It makes you the bigger person. Like, thanks, I will take that on board and I will try and fix my working condition, or I will try and look at the problem that you've highlighted, right?
Yeah.
That, I think, is a much better way to react to a bad review than to then have your back up against also, no, I'm right and you're wrong. You're a bad person for saying this to me. But like, I'm actually trying to help you. By me highlighting this issue, I'm potentially trying to save your business here.
Yeah, I may be testing it here, but just on the topic of reviews, and then we'll sort of move on to what I call the elephant in the room. What's the one really positive review and the one really horrible review that you've come across that stands out?
The bad ones are generally right now about not being paid for months. Some haven't been paid for years.
Are you seeing that there are more and more of those now? Because where I'm trying to go with this is the space that we're in and what's going on in pharmacy. So are you finding that there are, and I'm not using it as an excuse or a reason why, someone's... I know
where you come from here. The financially, yes, we are in a bad place.
Do you think there's more people not getting paid now?
No, not because so the companies that are highlighted are on a buying spree.
Right. Okay.
Right. If you had millions to buy pharmacies, you surely have thousands to pay your locums.
Okay. I see that logic.
If you were broke, where you couldn't pay your staff, and you weren't buying farms, but you're genuinely broke, and you're communicating with your locums and your staff and said, "Look, I'm in a really bad position.
Yeah.
I appreciate you waiting, and I appreciate that it's taking weeks or months for me to pay you, but here's a payment plan that we can both work with. I will pay you."
Yeah.
But when you get threatened, when you get ignored, when you get told, if you cancel tomorrow's shift because you haven't paid you for 3 months and I owe you £30,000,
yeah,
I will take you to court for not coming to work tomorrow.
Right. Okay.
Then you can understand why locums might be angry. And I have no sympathy for them.
Yeah.
And that's why I called them. I'm like, you have the money because I can see you're buying pharmacies. You're advertising it everywhere that you're buying these pharmacies.
What are sort of reasons that you get as to why they're not paying the locums? Because if they're buying pharmacies...
They don't even. This is the arrogance I don't understand. If you are genuinely short of money, talk to your pharmacists.
Yeah.
You don't have to ignore them. They didn't ignore you. You offered a job. they accepted,
Yeah.
right? And they came to work for you. They built up your business, looked after your patients, paid them, talked to them. You don't need to give me a reason. You don't need to give anyone else a reason. Just say, look, having tough time with the money. Here's a payment plan. Pay.
Yeah.
But I don't see why they're getting ignored or treated this way. People are, I'm not sure if you've seen the other day, Ola the baby, the comedian pharmacist. She had to post a video on TikTok and Instagram to get paid by one of the pharmacies that she's been chasing for months. Right? This is a company that has the money.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll take that as a negative. A lot of people complain about money, not getting paid. You don't see a direct link with the sort of the space and the financial distress in the sector at the minute. But from what you're describing,
what I'm saying is the companies that people are complaining about, they're on a
still
buying
buying pharmacies, and there's the arrogance, like you say, there's sort of linked to it as well.
But the ones that are genuinely struggling, I don't see them being complained about. Because they talk to the locum and say, look, I'll pay in a few more. Here's our payment terms.
Yeah, and presumably the locums understand that as well, because they're closer to that scenario situation. They know that they're struggling, and like you said, they're communicating with them. And what is it that people are saying nice things about pharmacies or pharmacy owners?
There's some that does a quite few that say, amazing workplace, great staff, they're told well. I've seen ones that say, the contractor pharmacy owner looked after me, paid me straight away. The next day. So, people do appreciate that. And that's the key message. If there's anything that you take away from what I've said, I don't care if you don't like me, if you don't like the TPC, if you think we're the worst thing since, we're the worst thing out there since COVID, just know that if you look after your staff, they will genuinely look after you. And ultimately that benefits you as the business owner.
Yeah.
It doesn't benefit me. They don't pay me. You don't pay me. I don't run an agency. I'm not in the business of running an agency. Run a platform for everyone to come together. Some of the co-founders are contractors themselves.
Yeah,
we have another co-founder was a hospital pharmacist, GP practice pharmacist. So we built this whole platform from a diverse perspective to give everyone a voice. It's not just a Locum platform.
And that's fair enough. Just sort of move to the next section then, sort of looking at the elephant in the room, and I think is a nice sort of lead into what we're just talking about money, because there is always going to be the money conversation. Okay. When you look at locum pharmacists and you look at pharmacy contractors, money comes into play, because that's what a lot of the conversation has been about. The fair pay me on time, pay me the right amount. And what we've agreed, I'm sure you get people that you've agreed X, but then they then try to pay you Y after you completed a shift. So I know all of these things go around, but I mentioned earlier that I qualified in 2008. And when you take into account inflation and everything else is going on around there, I generally think that we have taken a backward step in terms of what the real rate of pay is for locum pharmacists or for pharmacists in general. What do you think needs to happen in order to to fix that? Because we can say all we want around there isn't money in pharmacy, and you've touched on it a little bit. We'll sort of delve into that, and we may might as well just go into it now. When you talk about why are the pharmacies not thinking, I think you said the real question is, why can they not pay? Not can they afford to pay? And with our pharmacies, we're very, very private services driven, and we've done it for years now. But even at that, and it's almost like which comes first, right? Is it the chicken or the egg? And I think it's that's sort of the conversation that'll be had. Because if I had a pharmacy today, for example, and I wasn't doing any private services, not because I don't want to, maybe because I don't know about it. I don't know how easy it is to set up, and I haven't thought about it. Whatever the reason is, I've always relied on the NHS, 95% of my revenue, and everything's always been on Kidori. But all of a sudden, things are tough. Okay. In my current situation, I may not be able to afford, or do you accept that in that current situation, that particular contractor may not be able to afford to pay £40 an hour? And if that's the case, then there is a room for, is that why the friction is there? Because a pharmacy like Boots, like you mentioned earlier on, who does a lot of majority of the revenues not from the NHS, may be able to afford to do that. And you may get some other private contractors that may be able to. But for the vast majority of pharmacies, and we've talked about this on previous episodes, rightly or wrongly, they're still relying massively on the NHS. Yes, there is a case for you've got to shift that focus. And I think my last guest said it nicely. Whether you're a pharmacist Pharmacy owner, pharmacy professional, whatever you are in this sector, put it quite bluntly, you've got to adapt or die. Okay. And I think that's literally well said. Everybody agrees with that. So before the adaptation happens, if you like, do you accept that with the current state of play, if you don't do the different things, then you will struggle to pay the rates that are required? And if so, are you then saying, well, that's not the locum's problem, that's the pharmacy owner's problem to go and adapt?
So let me ask you a question. Why are pharmacists taking a pay cut to work in general practice?
Better working conditions, pensions, NHS?
Yeah. Locum fees are, let's say, wages for an employed pharmacist. It isn't just the money that you pay up front. I know locums who are earning 80 to 90,000 pounds a year who took a £50,000 a year job in GP practice because they said it's just less headache.
Yeah.
I will take a 50% pay cut, right? Yeah. As long as I've got a peace of mind, I can go home without being tired and not stressed.
8 to 4:30, Monday to Friday. Nice and sweet.
95 or whichever way you look at it, it is a lot less headache. It isn't always about the hourly rate, right? You can, if you can't pay someone right now what the market rate is, think what else can I do for them that will make it more attractive and make them want to come to my pharmacy and look after my business. Because you can go for the cheapest. You can say, you know what, I'm going to go with this agency that everyone loves to hate and everyone knows who they are, and they have the cheapest locums, and they can't negotiate, and they'll just come and click, and they'll come work for me, and I will keep running on this. There are a lot of pharmacies have been doing that for a long time because for them it was just easier to have the cheap locum ticking up boxes and then get the money every 3 months from the NHS and keep building it, and that's fine. Question is, when you bought that pharmacy, why didn't you think like a business, like an entrepreneur? Why didn't you develop your private services? Like maybe it wasn't the right area or the area people didn't have enough income to pay for private services. So what did you do about that? Did you have a business plan? Did you do your research? Did you look at online services? Did you look at the websites that you could develop? There's a lot of online pharmacies that are doing really, really well, right? There are people who are doing really well with purely online pharmacy, and they're supplying across the country, and they've got amazing business plans, right? Yeah. Then they start from scratch. So the excuse that, well, I can't afford to pay you right now, so can you work for me at this rate because I can't afford to pay you more than that, mate? It doesn't quite work for me because I have seen people who literally started businesses from scratch, and that within 6 months to a year, they're doing 6,000 to 8,000, 10,000 items a month on online pharmacy, and they're doing online services that are bringing in thousands every month without too much of an effort. I've spoken, so I was doing a market research for one of the startups I was working with, and I said, look, we're building this piece of software that will save your pharmacy 200 hours a month. It will cost you £10 a month to pay for the software. Are you interested? He said, oh, no, I can't bother with that. My staff will do whatever they need to do. So on the one hand, you're not willing to change. Yeah. You're not willing to look at developing your business and improving your income. But then you want the cheapest staff, you want the cheapest locums, and you want to pay your managers the minimum rate. You can't blame staff for wanting what they're worth. You can't find dispensers because they get more money working in supermarkets. Less risk, right? You're going to now tell the dispensers, well, why can't you come and work? Because we can't afford to pay you more. We know you get more from Aldi and Asda by doing working the tills. But look, you can come work for us in the healthcare setting, be more stressed out, and get paid less money. Yeah. Why would you want to do that?
I think I agree with some of the things that you said there. And for clarity's sake, like I said earlier on, I think I generally believe that the rate of pay should be more than it is for everybody within pharmacy.
You pose a question, is it a pharmacy owner's fault if they can't afford to pay you more, right? That's essentially what you're asking.
A pharmacy owner that isn't doing private services. Now, should we be doing private services? Should we all be doing private services? That's a separate conversation. And on loads of previous episodes that we've recorded, we're encouraging that, and that's the way to go. But I'll tell you why I'm asking that, Tohidul. And you mentioned about, I chuckled when we were talking about a contractor that wouldn't, pay £10 a month to save £300 a month or whatever it was. And I've done a bit of other stuff. I mentioned workflow earlier on, and it was a haggle and proper hassle to try and get anything out of pharmacy contractors. And I think that's part of the problem that we have as pharmacy contractors. We're not innovative. We're not business people. We're not thinking about how do we make money.
So then how are you blaming the staff? You can't then blame the staff and say, well, why are you asking for more money because I can't afford to pay you?
No. We're not, I'm not saying they are blaming the staff. Again, like I said, I think, look at COVID, for example. Let's look at during COVID times. Okay. When COVID was a thing, and I think this is sort of the way that I see this. Okay? During COVID, you saw the locum rates skyrocket. Okay. You were seeing ridiculous amounts, £50 an hour, £60 an hour, and pharmacies were paying it. Okay. And here is what happened prior to COVID. And now the money wasn't in the sector. But during COVID, where pharmacies were getting paid, however much it was, I think £22 per vaccination initially at the very, very early stages of it, and that money was there, you saw that pharmacies were willing to part with that money to pay the locums more.
The issue we have in that we have contractors who are willing to pay, even demand that locums work for as volunteers, whilst they're getting paid £12 short.
Yeah.
In a setting where all the expenses are covered. Right?
Yeah. And that should never happen. But you touched on it. You touched on it earlier and around sort of demand and supply and the free space to speak. As a pharmacy contractor, I can come and ask you as a locum if you want to volunteer. If you're feeling really generous and you want to, you want to put back to the community and, because COVID's happening, if you choose to do that, that's totally up to you. But I don't think
that's why you're making the money, though.
Don't think
you get paid.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think any contractor should be asking a locum to come and volunteer to deliver COVID vaccinations.
So this is one of the senior NPA board members at the time. He was asking locums to volunteer while he was getting paid. And I asked him that question.
What was his response?
He kicked me out of the group.
He kicked you out of the room?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't like the question. I think just given what you described there, I mean, I think that's not acceptable. But again, just going by what you have said about the freedom to ask, the freedom to speak, yes, anybody's allowed to ask anything of anybody. Whether or not that locum agrees to come and work for free and volunteer is a totally different thing. But like you said, on the surface of it, the contractors getting paid good money. They should be able to pay. And contractors in general, I think that's sort of an isolated person or situation you're describing there.
Again, I'm not saying all the contractors like that, but if we look at, again, going back to your question, whether should locums work for a pharmacy who can't afford to pay a high rate, if the locum agrees to it, then I don't have a problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is one of the questions I've got from our listeners for you later on as well, because that's a difficult thing.
It's a free market. It's a free market, right? If you're a really great boss and you're looking after me, what's going to go through my head? Do I want to work for Boots down the road where I'm going to be stocking shelves, dealing with stress, understaffed for £40 an hour, or I could work for Solomon for £30 an hour, have the staff branch, have a great banter with the staff and Solomon when I'm working there. It's not really a tough choice for me because I'd rather have less stress than less money than more stress and more money. Okay.
Yeah.
And go home and sleep and not be worried about have I made a mistake, because when you're in a high stress environment, the biggest issue is you're going to be making a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
In a well-staffed, well-trained environment, you're less likely to do so because you're going to be focused on your work. I mean, I know we talk about money a lot, but ultimately we're doing it for the patients. We need to make sure the environment we're working in is safe.
It's safe, yeah.
Enough staff there to do the work so they can focus on dispensing and I can focus on doing clinical checks. I don't need to be watching everyone all day, all the time, and putting labels on and printing the labels and bagging and doing everything myself. The staff who are trained well can do that. And if you're working for a pharmacy owner who has a well-trained team, I would happily work at a lower rate than someone who isn't paying more, but in a more stressful environment.
Here's a question for you, and going back just to wrap up the point around the money bit. I think, and this is what I believe, and you obviously can tell me otherwise if you agree or think otherwise. I think that COVID proved to us that if the money's within the sector, contractors are willing to pay as a general rule of thumb. Yes, you had the odd people that wanted volunteers and people that wanted to negotiate low rates, because the way the rate shot up during COVID and even for a year or so after proved to me that the problem, I think, in the sector is not that, and I know a lot of contractors just like you do. I speak to a lot of contractors. I'm a contractor myself. The problem is in that contractors don't want to pay, because you've got to remember, practically every contractor is a pharmacist. Before we all became contractors, we were employees or locums as well. Now, there will be the odd contractor that's sort of now a contractor and has forgotten life before being a contractor. You get a few of those, but for majority of contractors that I know, and certainly myself, I've got sort of like half contractor brain and half locum brain, and I'm also always thinking about it and stuff. And do you agree that COVID proved that if the money's in the sector, then most contractors would pay more? Would you agree with that statement?
When the free market is allowed to work as a free market.
The free market is brilliant, but the thing about the free market is market can be free all it wants, but if there isn't the money flowing...
Market isn't always free. That's the problem.
No, yes, and that is a problem. There should be a free market, but the free market goes both ways, okay? So if there's a limited amount of money within the sector that the pharmacy owners have to pay, and that's what we've seen post-COVID, okay? And I think COVID and post-COVID has shown it. Pre-COVID, you had the rate. During COVID and just after COVID, the rate shot up, right? What's happened there is there's now more money within the sector, and pharmacists and locum pharmacies saying, I'm not working for that amount of money, because if you remember,
there was also the numbers of pharmacists who were working within the sector also went down.
Yes, it did. But the original rates started shooting up with the vaccination sites. So it was the vaccination sites that were paying these 40, 50 pounds an hour rate. But what you then found was post-COVID, or towards the later end of COVID, a lot of pharmacists then thought, why should I work for 25 pounds or 20 pounds an hour when these guys can afford to pay this? So that rate then sort of trickled into community pharmacy. And even the pharmacies, even at the point that didn't have a COVID vaccination contract, and were sort of stung by this. But I remember at the time thinking, it's a free market, right? There's nothing the contractors can do at this point, because some of our sites, for example, some of our branches didn't have a COVID vaccinations contract, okay? But we were not going to say to a locum, come and work for this amount because we don't have a COVID vaccination contract. Because why should a locum do that? The locum's just going to go and work for the other pharmacy that's got a COVID vaccination contract and can afford to pay them, and that's fair game. So we had to adapt, and that's the free market that you're talking about.
Yeah, but also supply was low as well.
Supply was low as well, yes. But what's then happened after that is the money's now dwindled. It's gone. And even towards the later end of the COVID vaccinations, a lot of locums were still holding out. As you will be aware, I'm not working for less than 40. I'm going to wait until last minute and everything. But what's then happened is naturally demand and supply, free market, it sort of adjusted itself to where it is now, which is probably sort of around your 30 pounds an hour.
Number of other things happened in that time.
Okay.
Number of other things that happened, and we need to take that into account. It is a complex system in the pharmacy world. It isn't, as I said, it's not a free market. I wish it was.
Yeah,
but it's a free market. On the one hand, you've got 3,000 less pharmacies. A lot of pharmacies have been sold. They've been bought up by independents or locums who made their money and now they're working in it themselves. So the demand for locums have gone down. The number of pharmacists have gone up as well. We've had this. It is, and it's just. I think it's just a big fake news that a lot of the large organizations are pushing in that there is a shortage of pharmacists. Yeah. So the more and more universities have opened up, right? And they couldn't prove a shortage. And at the same time, we had a lot of pharmacists, overseas pharmacists coming in as well.
Yeah.
Right. So we went from, I think, somewhere around 50,000 in the last few years. We got up to 60,000 pharmacists at the moment, right? The number of pharmacies have gone down in that same period. So you've got less work, but more pharmacists. Only around 5,000 or 6,000 pharmacists work in GP practice. So you've got 70% of the pharmacists working in general in community pharmacy, which is about 42,000 pharmacists, working in around 12,000, 13,000 pharmacies across the country. 10,000 of which are, just some 10,000 of which are in England. The majority of pharmacists live in England anyway. And I think at one point we worked out there are 3 pharmacists for every pharmacy.
3 pharmacists for
Every
I was going to
pharmacy.
ask that question. Do you think we've got too many pharmacists?
I think there's way too many pharmacists.
Should we just put a stop to it? Because another, 200, is it 2,000? Well, 2,000 is going to qualify again this year.
Probably, and within the next few years, you're going to go up to about 4,000
Yeah.
a year.
A year.
Our 4,000 jobs being created, though.
No.
Every year.
No. And that's the problem. So we're going to get to a bottleneck, and it's going to cause a problem because pharmacies are closing, like you've highlighted, and more pharmacies will close. That's the harsh reality of the current situation. You've got pharmacists coming out, and the government's talking about, the independent prescribing pathway and sort of pharmacists and community pharmacies. Now, unless, based on the data you've given there, you're going to have 3 pharmacists in every pharmacy at the same time. Then
right now, we've got 3
that's right now. Then you've got more pharmacists than pharmacies, and that's only going to cause a problem. Obviously,
drive down the rates even more.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. And so, what's your advice then? What do you think? What needs to happen? Do we need to stop pharmacists qualifying?
I think we've got too many schools of pharmacy at the moment. You want to put down, and we need to improve the quality of the education that we've got. And I think a lot of the pharmacy schools have let themselves down in terms of the level of education and training that they give to their pharmacists, and we see that every day on from the type of questions that people ask on the if you're stuck, sometimes you get brain fog, you ask questions. But we've had people who basically took a picture of 2 boxes of amlodipine, right? Maliate, both the same thing, just different fonts, same brand, different fonts. They're asking, I did the same thing. Yeah. And then you've got, some of these questions are very, very basic, and you think, which university did you go to? Who's teaching you? Right? And I know it sounds harsh, and, people I'm sure they'll have their own views about this, but I think the universities need to do much better than that they're doing right now. So that's the first thing. We've got too many university schools of pharmacy already, and we've got more and more opening up every other year. And then obviously you've got the overseas pharmacists coming in as well on top of that, adding more pressure to the current job market. Anything against anyone coming into work here, that don't get me wrong. But I'm saying in terms of the current job market and where it is and the salary, it will only go down. Keep doing what we're doing. Now,
I've always thought that too many schools of pharmacies, even before the latest cohort of the ones that opened, because all you have to do is compare them to schools of medicine. There's only a handful of universities offering medicine. And what it does is it protects the integrity of the profession. And when you have pharmacies sort of churning out left, right, and center, I don't know, I agree with you 100%. I see a lot of pharmacists or pharmacy students coming through the system, and you just sort of wonder what is going on, because it's almost like, the level, what's the entry requirement, what are they teaching them, and all of those things. And it's filtering through, and all it does, like I said, is it really does change the integrity of the profession.
I've heard it from one colleague that where they work, that they've been told not to fail anyone. That's how desperate some of these are.
Okay.
Right. And this is the issue we have, in that you have universities now desperate to churn out more pharmacy students, because they need to keep their funding in place. And then you've got more and more and more universities opening up with new schools of pharmacies. What will their quality, who's maintaining that quality of education? And this is, I think, something that we really need to tackle, the number of pharmacists that we have, unless you've got these people working. And this goes back to what I said about the market isn't really free, because the number of pharmacies that are out there, the job market is capped, right? We can't just go and open up another pharmacy down the road.
Yeah.
Because you get the control of entry. And now I think you can't even open a new online pharmacy anymore. That's gone as well.
The DSP contract's gone.
So the only option you have now is private pharmacies.
Yeah.
Even that's pretty difficult to open unless you get everything right. So if you're going to control all of this on the one hand, and then you're going to bring in more and more pharmacists on the other hand, that's not a free market.
I think it's the idea of having too many pharmacists and cutting the other side of it, the pharmacy side of it, is always going to cause a problem in the long run. And I think that's where the challenge is really going to be. And I'm listening to you there and thinking, you did say that we need to do something about it. I do agree 100%. I think something needs to be done because the universities, you've got to think about it and think, okay, what's GPHC doing about this? And all the other.
I know we keep a lot of people saying, why isn't GPHC protecting the pharmacists, or why aren't they speaking up for us? The regulators are not there for us. They're there for the public.
Yeah.
I think what we need is a strong professional body, which is supposed to be the RPS. But they're like, we don't want to be a professional body anymore. We just want to be a Royal College.
Yeah.
So we don't even have a proper professional body anymore.
Yeah. Which is why, and that filters into a lot of other things in terms of the pharmacy contracts and for the contractors, which filters through rate of pay. We're not talking about the university. So there's a link to all of these things in that pharmacy is not united.
And this is what I think when I set up the cooperative, that's one of the things I've noticed in that the whole system is linked.
Yeah.
You have an impact on one side, it ripples all the way through. Right? So when we established a cooperative, our idea, we knew that this is going to have an impact on everyone else. We need to have a more inclusive organization that'll be for everyone, which is again why we've got so many different groups. There's a group for every sector of the profession to speak up and join and make things better. And again, this is why it's so important to understand that this isn't an us versus them. This isn't Locum versus contractors, or employed pharmacists versus the Locums, or the employed pharmacists versus the pharmacy owners. We're all in it together. We're going to have to figure this out, right? Because if there's too many pharmacists, what's going to happen? One of two things. Either we're going to start opening up more private pharmacies and compete with you for your business, or we're going to leave the sector. The best ones will leave the sector because they know they've got specific set of skills, they're very intelligent, they've got experience, they'll be wanted somewhere else for better money. So we'll have a brain drain. We'll have people who's less experienced running our businesses.
Talking about brain drain there and the best ones and experiences, here's a question from one of our listeners that wants me to put to you. And it's basically, they're asking, why haven't you encouraged, and you may well have done this and you can correct any answer if you want, why haven't you encouraged more locums to upskill themselves over the years instead of just pushing for better rates? And some feel that the pay demands are high, but the skills offers don't match. So I'll give you an example of that. So I get locum pharmacists coming to the pharmacies, and I've had some really great pharmacies over the years. There was one that sort of sticks out, and during the flu season, he'd come in and he's paid for his own private flu jab. Okay, so he's got a PGD for his own private flu that he can then go about and use anywhere else. Now, for that particular locum, I'm happy to pay him a little bit more because he's delivering a bit more. But then you get another pharmacist on the other end that's sort of come through the door, and we've made very clear via Workflow, the booking platform, you've uploaded your documentation, we've said it's mandatory to do a flu jab. You then rock up on the day and you tell the team in branch, I'm not doing a flu jab. When you ask why, you say, I'm not trained to you. And then they challenge you and say, well, we've got your certificate and here it is and stuff. And it's like, oh, well, but I'm not paid enough to do this and I want more pay. Now, there is always going to be that divide as well, because I genuinely, and I suspect you may be saying that your response may be something like, why can't the pharmacist train them? But I think...
No, that's not my response.
Right, okay. So
that's a really bad locum, and I don't think you should hire him again. Simple as that.
So are you pushing for locums to train and upskill themselves? Is that a thing that you'd push for?
Day one. I have been saying that from day one, that if you're a locum, you're a business. You are a business. When you're in the pharmacy, you're the pharmacist. Without the pharmacist, light can't come on. Right? You've got clinical skills to the prescription checking. That's great. But if the business is running private services, you need to be upskilling, being able to do those private services, and you negotiate a fee for that private service.
Yes.
You can't just go in and ask, well, I want 50 quid an hour because I'm a pretty pharmacist, right? You're a pharmacist, you enable the pharmacist to open, you enable the pharmacist to operate, right? There's a fee for that. Right? Anything more, you can make a lot more money by upskilling, being able to do flu jab services, being able to do ear microsuction, being able to do weight loss service, ADHD service, travel clinic service. I've always said, look, you have to upskill. You're in a marketplace full of thousands of other locums. If you want the best rates, you have to provide the best services.
What percentage of your locums would you say have upscaled? Because I personally don't see or haven't come across. I'm really impressed with what you're saying there, that you're sort of getting your locums to upscale to do ear syringing and, weight loss services, flu jabs and all of these things. Honestly, my experience, and that may be an isolated experience over the years, isn't that. I've had a handful of locums that are really good. I've had a handful of locums that we've worked with who are happy to deliver services. And in fact, what we do is if we've got a regular locum in any of our branches who is sort of interested and wants to be upskilled, we will pay for their PGD and training to deliver the private services. We're happy to do that. But I think what you're saying there is you've always encouraged that what percentage of your pharmacists on your network would you say are willing to maybe not necessarily upskill, or do they turn a blind eye to it and think, well, why do I have to do it?
So I think the ones that don't, there's always going to be a certain group, and I've spoken to a few myself and said, look, why don't you upskill and do these services? Like, well, one, all we expect to do is be the cheapest locum. They never ask us about what service can we do. All they ask is what rate can you work for, right? And then they'll say, well, we're going to pay you 25, 26, 30 quid an hour. And we get stuck in branches where there's no staff and we have to do everything. So we can't even do any services. We have to pay hundreds, if not thousands of pounds to upskill to do this service. Like ADHD service costs about £1,700 for the weekend training, right? And the first question we would ask is, well, how much can I get paid for it to do the service? Weight loss, it costs about £500. And people are like, oh, wow, £500? And then how much am I going to get paid for it? Most contractors, most pharmacies they go to, they're like, well, it'll be part of your hourly rate. If you don't incentivize people to do those services, they're not going to do it. When you have a market which only rewards the cheapest locums, then you're going to get only those people who are going to say, well, it's what you're paying me for. You get what you pay, ultimately, right? If you can't go to a Skoda showroom and buy a Ferrari.
Yeah, I think there's definitely the scope. I think that the sector needs a big, massive, sort of wake up call and mindset change. You look at it with the dentists and opticians, and every time I speak to anybody, I think my last guest was saying the same thing as well. And I think we are there, and these things would have to happen. There's no other way around it. We are there at the minute where we're going to have to start thinking differently. I think we're just sort of caught at the beginning of it, and it may feel like we're having a conversation a lot, but we're really going to have to do something differently because...
Well, and I think I've seen the shift over the past year, especially. I've been saying this for a good few years now. Markets are changing. You need to go into private services. If you look at some of my old messages, I've been saying this for years. We need to, especially the locals, you guys need to change on private services. Set up your private pharmacies, right? Go do private services. And that's one of the reasons why I joined Omar. So I was telling you about the marketing side where, he said, look, pharmacies are 10 years behind dentistry. Back in the days, you'd go into dental practice. It was a house with those old chipboard wallpapers. Not the most friendliest place. And you get your teeth drilled and your gums bleeding and all sorts of stuff, right? No one likes to go to a dental practice or see a dentist. You go because you got a toothache. Now it's a health spa, right? And you pay £2,000, £3,000, £4,000 to get your teeth straightened, and you pay a couple of £1,000 or £1,000 to get your teeth gleaming white, like you've just got dentures on. But they do all sorts of other stuff as well. And they spend a lot of money on marketing. And they realized 10 years ago that it's either do something different now or we go bust. And they realized we're like the petrol stations from 20 years ago. So back then, the petrol stations were actually making a loss. And then the Issa brothers came along. They've turned one of the petrol stations and they saw a bit of land and they're like, what can we do with this? They went to, Starbucks and they went to Costa and McDonald's and they put all of these stuff in their garage, right? Yeah. And then they went to the bank and said, well, we've got all these multinational companies on our forecourt. Give us some money. We'll buy more petrol stations and we'll expand our empire. And then they started making more money from these things than they did with petrol. But everyone needs petrol and diesel to drive. They go in.
Come there anyway.
So they changed their business model from selling petrol to selling sweets and coffee and everything else. Then they decided, well, we're going to have to change our business model. We're going to have to go from drilling people's teeth and fixing them up and numbing or taking their tooth out to making them feel like they want to come to us and part way with 3, 4, 5,000 pounds and have a Hollywood smile, right? Or they played on the confidence side. Pharmacy is in the same position. You're going to need medicine. What else can we give to our patients? What do they need? We figured out people want to lose weight. We've given them Manjaro and everything else. Women who are going through menopause, they need extra support. So we've got private clinics that do women's health. People go on holidays. They come to the pharmacy, they get their travel, we charge for that. We're making money out of that. People want to quit smoking. There's an NHS service for that. People want to, there's now these ADHD clinics. So from what we've heard today from this week is that there's a 100-year backlog of patients who have been, who are on the waiting list right now, not diagnosed, who are on the waiting list right now. That at the current rate, there's a 100-year backlog.
Right.
For those
For the ADHD.
For the ADHD. So now a lot of pharmacists are training up for assessment and titration, right? As a private service. I've been to training up. I thought it was brilliant training. Actually, I've genuinely enjoyed sitting for the last 16 hours, glued to the screen, learning about ADHD and how to assess patients, to do the 5 questionnaire and the titration. Fascinating stuff. So there are now, and I think with me, there was 12 other pharmacists who paid each £1,600 to be on that training because they want to do something different. There is a urge and a desire for pharmacists, local pharmacists, and all of them were local pharmacists. They all wanted to do something different. They are investing in themselves to do more. So now the question is, what are pharmacy owners willing to do to bring these guys on board to improve their own income?
It almost feels like there's got to be a platform or a place where both parties would meet to understand this, because I'm listening to you there, and pharmacists are upskilling. We've talked about upskilling. The contractors want to do private services, and they're not necessarily, speaking very broadly here, aware that there are pharmacists out there that have already upskilled. Okay. And we almost need to find a way to have that conversation, because like I said to you earlier on, we do a lot of private services across our branches, and we would typically pull a locum, does a regular locum or wants to be a regular locum with us through a training and sort of, pay for their PGD and have a conversation around rates or whatever it is to deliver private services alongside everything else that we're doing. If I had a locum that's paid for their PGD already, or there's an IP that's trained and wants to come in and work a shift, a week, or whatever it is, not necessarily regular, that may work for me, because then when my regular pharmacist is on holiday, my services doesn't have to stop. But it's either I don't know where to find those locums, or there ain't enough of them yet, or if they are, we're not screaming about it. But like you said earlier, and it may be because, and I think to the locums that are saying, what's the point in doing the training when they're just going to pay me nothing for it? I think it's someone's got to go first. You've got to move first, because if you come to me, and I genuinely believe most contractors would be the same in this case, and I may be against me speaking general terms here. If you come to me and say, I want, £5 an hour more than the going rate, but I'm trained to do travel vaccinations, earwax removal, weight loss, I don't see an issue with that. I will pay what you want, because I can open my calendar up on that day and I keep getting the bookings. And it's a simple numbers game. But this is another thing that we don't do a lot of with pharmacy owners. If I don't pay you the amount of money that you want, and I close my calendar for the day, I would most definitely have lost more money than I would have if I've put you in there. But a lot of contractors would argue, I don't know who's going to come in. And that's where you're going to come in and say, well, that's kind of your problem as a business person, that you've not got your business to a point where you can basically get your calendars and the advertising and whatever you need to do in the background. Because sometimes what we do as contractors is we set up a service, we then sit back and wait for people to come in and ask about it. And I know you're doing some work around that, but I think it's an interesting one. And I'm sort of listening to that there and thinking, I think this is where we need to go with this, almost a place where the pharmacists, the locums that are trained and upskilling, can meet the contractors, and we can sort of shake hands, and we exist, and you want that. And I think that's what needs to happen over time, just to keep that service flowing.
I'm going to give you an example of the dentists on this one. Do you know why dentists pay 5, 10, 15, £20,000 a year on training? Because of dental practices will remunerate a share of the profit, a share of the service profit. So for dentists, my wife's a dentist, she pays stupid lot of money for training. I mean, she will pay £2,000 just to go to a training on how to talk to patients.
Yeah, I think
And
I listened to one of the podcasts you've done. I think £30,000 you said, yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, they'll pay. They'll happily pay for it. I mean, not happily, but they'll pay for it. But they know they will get that
They'll
money
get
back.
it back, yeah.
And I think that pharmacists can get that. I mean, we don't even pay anywhere near as much for our training, right? And I know for a fact if pharmacy owners were to take the initiative to look at providing more private services, I would guarantee you there'll be a pharmacist next day, next week, next month who will come to you, train up for the service and say, you know what, I'll work in your pharmacy. I'll do your clinical check on your prescriptions, and I'll also do the private services, provided you give me a percentage of that private service, because I've taken the initiative to go do the training. I'm taking all the clinical risks for that service, and I want a fair percentage for that. Now, what you work for is between you and I'm not going to set a rate. I'm not here to set anyone's rates. But if you make it fair, they will all go out there and do the training, and they will definitely line up to work for you, right? And I have seen this, and I'm not making this up. I have genuinely seen, and I've heard from Locum to say, "Look, T, I will do this service. I will go do this training. I'll go pay £600, £2,000 for this service if I get paid for it. If there is work for me, I will invest, because, like I said, it's a business. If you're not gonna buy stock, that will just sit on the shelf. You're not going to go buy big boxes of thermometers if they're just going to sit on the shelf and no one can. Take the initiative to set up a private service. Reach out to me. Look, we don't charge for people to advertise on a shift on the Telegram network. Reach out to me if you say, look, I'm doing this, saying this private service. I need to find a local who can do this service for me. I'll put it out there. Now, we get hundreds of job adverts, local shifts, also on our network every month. Approximately less than 1%. In the last few months, I can't remember a single job post that went on where they said, we need a locum that can do these private services. This is how much we're going to pay them. Not one. So if you're not going out there actively looking for these people, they're not going to come to you.
Yeah. I didn't even know they existed, and I think that's the interesting thing from this conversation, is that there are locums out there that sort of upskill themselves and are willing and ready to sort of go out there and then offer those services. And I think that's most contractors' dream, really. Obviously, like you said, there is a conversation to be had about the rate that's paid and stuff like that. But I think most contractors would take that, and that's an interesting sort of reality.
If we just look at the dental world, the moment dentists they'll either pay for the training themselves, or the company will pay. When the company pays for the training, the dentist generally will get around 50 to 60% of the profit. So, and the rest will go to the practice, right? So there is already a tried and tested system in place in the dental world, where these private services, they're working as a standard almost there. It's working really well. Dentists are paying for their own training, thousands of pounds, like I said. And pharmacists would be willing to pay for those training services, and they are paying, your a good weight loss training that the age training does, £500 plus VAT. And locums every other week, they're paying around the country to go to these training services and do the training, and then go home and learn more about it. Right. So that's it. If you're a contractor and you listen to this and you think you can't find a pharmacist who's trained up on any of the private services, reach out to me. I will happily post it for free, and I will help you find someone who will do that service for you.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Tohidul. I'm sure a lot of our contractors listening to this will take you up on that offer. And we'll obviously talk about how they can reach out at the end of the conversation. So just fast forward to today then, and you're training as a prescriber, and you're helping private clinics and pharmacies develop private services. How did that shift happen?
So I think in terms of being a prescriber, I've kind of left it because I've just had so many things going on at the same time. And then eventually I got to the point where I'm actually working 1 day a week in general practice. And I saw the big difference in how clinical the work is in general practice, and how useful being a prescriber can be. And also I've seen the big shift in private services, and again, how beneficial and how important it is to be a prescriber and to be able to prescribe private services. And I thought, I need to be able to do this myself to fully understand what prescribers go through, what challenges they face. So only by being a prescriber, then I'll understand their needs better. So that's one of the reasons why I've gone into being a prescriber. The other thing is, no, I'm interested in private services and I want to develop my own skills as well as a pharmacist. And then obviously when I was, I've got a keen interest in behavioral psychology and economics and how, what makes people buy things, why do certain businesses succeed so well, and what is about marketing that makes people buy a certain product or company over another one where the service is identical, the product is identical. So then I met Omar, who's done some amazing work across Middle East and even in UK with Harley Street clinics and the dental practices. And we got talking about the pharmacy world and where we are, the challenges that we face, both within the Locum sector and also within the pharmacy owners, and how some of my friends who are pharmacy owners, how the challenges that they're facing. And he's like, you're just like dentists. It is like, I mean, he's 10 years ago, dentists were like this. So he said, look, why don't you come and join my company? You understand pharmacy. I understand dentistry and marketing. We'll work together. We'll try and develop something within the pharmacy world that really transforms the private services. The way because his marketing company, I've seen the work he's done firsthand at my wife's dental practice. And they were getting like 20, 30,000 pounds worth of leads every month in a very busy dental practice. After taking over, that shot up to 80, 90, 100,000 pounds in leads. And I tried to understand, what is it about the way you market a private service that makes people come to you, and what is it about the website? A lot of people, I've seen some really interesting conversations on Telegram where people saying, like, oh, I know how to build a website. I've done the course online. I'm like, yeah, I know how to cut a hedge. I'm not a gardener, though. I know how to put some pipe together, but I'm not a
plumber. Yeah.
Marketing is actually very, very interesting. It's not just putting some ads together and getting your SEO and having a pretty looking website. Everything about the website, where the way it's laid out, where certain words are, where certain pictures are, they're very strategically placed. The color itself, you have to choose the right color. You have to choose the right font, right pictures. The way the words are laid out have to be done in a certain way that it guides your eyes. So there is this real science behind marketing, and it's constantly changing. Your SEO is constantly changing. Now you've got AI. People are worried about AI taking their jobs, and like, you really need to understand AI. It's not that smart. It's not going to take a job anytime soon. But it is an amazing tool to help speed up the work that you're doing, to marketing easier. I mean, one of the things that we do is we have this voice assistant AI handling your phone calls. So you're doing you're running a clinic, you're with a patient, phone call comes in, and it talks like a real person. Because one of the things that everyone hates is talking to an AI or chatbot that can't answer any questions.
Yeah.
These sound like real people.
Yeah.
Right? And they respond like people. They're trained on your services, so they know what services you provide, and they can book your patients in. Right, okay. They can nurture those leads until you get the chance to speak to those patients. 12 o'clock at night, you're not going to handle a phone call. Yeah. But some patient might want to book a travel clinic. Yeah. They might have some questions. I'll pick up the phone to your pharmacy, open 24 hours, talk to the chatbot, get the answer they need, book it in, and off you go.
You've got a service ready to deliver. And is this all through Clinic Smart? Is that correct?
So we're building, we've got this AI that does all of that work. We've got an amazing team that knows how to build websites and services just for private clinics and private services. Currently working on a couple of AI projects within the company where it can manage clinical services and record calls and summarize the calls for you as well. Yeah. There's another project we're working on where it can speak to patient, get a lot of the initial screening as well for the patient. It's quite a few projects things that we're working on within the company. But I think what's important is there is a growing market. There is money to be made as a pharmacy, private clinics. You don't have to worry about paying someone £20, £25, and then worrying whether you're getting your value for money. You will get your value for money. Just look at the private services. That's where the money is. And that's how you're going to be able to pay your staff a fair rate, a good rate, have a good business in place, keep building on that.
What are the most significant marketing mistakes that pharmacies make when delivering private services?
There's a few things. Websites are really bad. A lot of pharmacies. They're really bad. They're not laid out right. They're not designed for the service. The other thing is we don't spend enough money on marketing. We see it as an expense.
Yeah.
It's an investment. If you do it right, it's an investment because no one knows where you are. So you need to let people know, if you're an online pharmacist especially, that you're here, you're doing this service, right? And the reviews, you need to make sure you get enough reviews from good reviews from like Google reviews, and there's quite a few review companies out there. You need to make sure that your reviews are on Google and on the different companies.
Yeah.
So in terms of the marketing side, I'd say, focus on your website. Make sure it's a good website. It's unique. It stands out and it's fast. But people get put off really quick if it's badly designed, or there's too much text. And if you just, if they can't see the prices of your services. I see a lot of pharmacies that you have to go through pages and pages, and then eventually you see what the price is. Well, let people know. Let them know what they're expecting to go into. And, just make sure you hire a good marketing team. Unless they come to me and I'll do all your work. Whoever you go to, make sure they understand private clinic marketing. They understand how healthcare works, what drives people to go for this service. If someone wants to lose weight, don't be like every other weight loss company. Then, how are you different? You need to stand out from that crowd. Everyone's doing weight loss now. So now it's getting harder to stand out. You have to be better at being able to stand out, right? Women's health service. There aren't many pharmacists doing it or many clinics out there. Good time, find a niche and really go into it. A good team together, put a good service in place, have the right pharmacists in place who are trained, who are happy to provide a service and who are happy to go away and upskill and continuously learn more and more about that service that they're providing. Everyone can do a weight loss service, but not everyone will spend the time to sit with the patient and understand, why did you put on that weight? What's stopping you from, losing that weight? Is it stress, work? Do you actually have a health condition that stops you from losing weight? Right? Is there some kind of phobia going on? Weight loss is a complex topic. It's not just a questionnaire that you fill in and there you go. Here's your jab, £200, please. Thank you. Look after your patients and they'll keep coming back to you.
And you talk a lot about ethical promotion, and you sort of hinted at the ethics of the weight loss service, for example. What does ethical promotion look like in 2025?
I think the easiest way to answer that one would be, you are also a paid customer, right? You don't want to be ripped off and you don't want to be given false hopes and false promises. And pharmacists have a halo of trust. We're like the guardians of healthcare system. We're the first ones you see if you have any minor conditions. We're the last one you'll see when you come out of a hospital or from the GP, right? We're the ones that patients come to at both of those points. So people trust us to give them the right advice. They don't expect to be ripped off or be sold something that they don't need. So for me, don't worry about the money too much. Make sure you do a good service. Make sure you give the patients what they need, right? And it's not about, like, for example, going back to the weight loss, it's not about keeping them on that weight loss injection. And if someone's taking 4 or 5 months, they're not losing weight, don't keep giving them more injections. Just tell them, look, it's not working. What is it that you're not able to do that keeps that weight on you? So talk to your patients. So, it's quite easy to chase the pounds. If you look after your patients and you do a good service, you'll make that money. That's the guarantee.
And honestly, just for yourself, like, your plate is full, but you're obviously not stopping anytime soon, are you? So what's next for Tohidul?
I think for me, I had a company called the PSH. They reached out to me a few months ago and they said, look, we need thousands of pharmacists who can do remote services. We'll have to pay them a good fair rate. And they asked me, well, what do you think is a fair rate? I told them what a fair rate is, and like the weight loss, for example, I told them, give a pharmacist £20, £30 per consultation. They'll sit there and they'll talk to the patients. They're happy with that, and they said, look, we need hundreds of these pharmacists. because they want to provide this service remotely for other pharmacies, which is a quite interesting business model that, if you say, for example, if you have a pharmacy set up a weight loss service, very successful, allow you to scale, they allow you to scale without making the investment. I've done some consultancy work for them. I think for me, once I've got my IP out of the way, I would like to be an ACP as well. I'm really interested in this ADHD course that I've done. So I think I'm going to spend a bit more time on that one. And I'm doing another project with a couple of colleagues where we're developing a patient certification tool.
Okay.
In primary care. That itself is quite a big project, a lot of research work to do on that one. So I think I'll probably be doing quite a lot of work.
You've got your fingers in a few pies, keeping busy and out of trouble. How can people support the work that you're doing and get involved in the community that you've built?
Just join the group, get involved. I think our link is there. I'll pass you on the link as well, so people can join the pharmacy TPC network on Telegram. And if you're interested in anything I'm doing, if you're interested in supporting the profession, just join the network, get involved. We don't ask much of anyone who joins to bring another person with you. We need to grow. We're welcoming. It's a welcoming network. We have no barriers there, or we'll try not to have any barriers there, apart from being professional. So yeah, just join the network and just get involved in what you do, what we're doing. If you're running a private service or you want to set up a private service, I'm always happy to answer any questions. If you're looking for trained pharmacists, we've got hundreds of them on the network. Again, reach out to me. I have nothing against. I might be a contractor soon myself, who knows? And then, find the cheapest Locum as well.
And I'll be interested.
No, I think, like I said, it is a massive versus them. It's we're all in it together. So yeah,
and that's TPT Network on Telegram.
Not TCP, TPC.
TPC, the Pharmacist Cooperative.
Yeah.
That's you both pharmacy contractors and locums alike
are
welcome.
We have a separate support group for contractors as well. It's just purely for contractors.
Okay, that's fine. And is there, you mentioned about the contractors, so for any contractors listening to this that may want to get those locums that are offering the private services, is there a charge to that, or is it just a direct conversation between?
Direct conversation. Actually, that platform is open to everyone. As long as you follow some basic rules, you're welcome to join.
And you joked there about might be a pharmacy contractor one day. I think the listeners might be curious. Is that a thing?
I don't know. It might be, might not be. We'll see.
So you're not giving much away, but I'm sure we'll keep an eye out and see what happens. You have a lot that's going on, and you have done for a good few years now. How do you stay focused? What keeps you grounded?
That's the hardest question you've asked.
Is that the hardest one so far?
The hardest one so far. I don't know. I just do what needs to be done. I just try and get to it. Just do it. I think for me, it's just if I find it interesting, I'll just get hyper focused and just go ahead and do it. I don't worry about whether I can do it or whether I might be able to do it. I just go ahead and give it a go. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Might not succeed, or at least I've tried.
And what have you said no to recently, and why?
I've had someone reach out. So there's a couple of things I think that comes to mind. A couple of years ago, I said, look, would you guys be interested in setting up a national pharmacy chain? We'll start off with one pharmacy. Everyone put your money in and we'll buy a pharmacy. And at that time, I think the Boots was on for sale and they wanted me to basically put some part of money together and buy out Boots. I said, look, let's see how much can we put together. So I think in an hour, we managed to raise about $500,000 to close to $1 million pledged. So I said, look, we've got that money cash there. We'll have to put into any project that you want, any pharmacy that you want to buy. I said, just hold on to that. Because I wanted to be sure that I fully understand the ins and outs before I take anyone's money. It's a huge responsibility to take somebody else's hard-earned money. So I had to say no to that because at that time I wasn't ready to take on such a big project. Yeah. It's a lot, and you have to have the right people around you who understand how to not only manage that money, but be fully open, transparent, and honest about how the money is being spent, whether they'll get a good return for that investment. And I think recently somebody else asked me to partner with them on a private clinic. And I said, no, I can't. I just don't have the time right now. There's too many things I'd love to take on, but I like to sleep sometimes.
Don't look
I
like
like
you
to
get
watch,
much of that.
like to watch TV sometimes.
Yeah.
I've been binging on Andor season 1 and the movie straight after. So, my weekends go on that sometimes. So, I think family is important as well. We love to work, but I think, when you've got kids and you've got a family, you've got your missus, you need to give them time as well.
Yeah.
And I think I'll probably slow down a little bit now. Kids are growing up. So focus a bit more on that.
Okay, thank you. And what's the one message you'd give to your pharmacists sort of feeling stuck, overwhelmed, and perhaps uninspired at the minute? Because I speak to a lot of pharmacists, and there are loads of them I know, and I'm sure you would know a few people like this as well have left the industry. They've left the sector, they've gone on to do other things. And it's heartbreaking when you see that. And I'll be very honest with the listeners here. I've asked myself this question, and I don't know if you've ever asked yourself this. And it may be sort of the state of play within the sector or the industry. And every now and again over the years, I sort of stopped and thought, if I didn't own my own pharmacy and if I'd not been fortunate enough to be a pharmacy contractor, would I still remain within the sector? And would I still remain in the industry? I love what I do as a pharmacist. I love my patients. I love, sort of the teaching and educating part of it. I love what I'm doing now with the podcast. I love sharing my experience and talking about pharmacy, and I'll do that until the car comes home. But I think for me, it's just, I've seen a lot of people sort of move. What would your advice be for that one pharmacist feeling stuck and overwhelmed and, like I said, uninspired? Because there are loads of them at the minute.
I felt like that a lot over the years. Ultimately, you got to do what's right for you. Not everyone's cut out to be a locum. Not everyone's cut out to be a contractor. And not everyone's cut out to be an employed pharmacist. Some people like industry. Some people like a hospital. And I worked in hospital, part of my period in hospital, and it was so laid back. Absolutely loved it. And some people like that lifestyle. They want to go in, do their 9 to 5 and go home. So if you're in community and you're feeling overwhelmed or underwhelmed and you think, am I in the right place? Then go try something else. See if the grass is greener on the other side. It might be. Or it might be brown and dead and even worse. And then you'd be like, oh, thank God I've still got to go back. So I think until you try something else, you won't know. So, there are, I think as a pharmacist, we're fortunate in that whatever we do, there's always pharmacy to fall back into. There's always locum to fall back into. Even if you're not a successful contractor, worst case scenario, you lose your pharmacy, but at least you can go back and locum or work for another pharmacy, right? You've got that skill there. I think as long as you've got a really good set of skills and you're good at what you do, there will be demand for you. Right. I like coding and I spend a lot of time, taking apart AI and looking at the coding of AI and how the whole different models work and what the algorithms are and how they work and what the research papers are saying. I enjoy doing that. And, whichever sector, whichever job, whichever industry you go into, if you really focus and you're really good at what you do and you give 110%, there will be a need and there will be someone who will want you and who will pay you a good money to be to work for them, or you'll find something that you're so passionate about that people want to pay for your service, whatever you're selling.
So just believe in yourself, find what you love to do, and just go for it. That's piece of advice.
I know sometimes it's easy for you to say, but you don't know what I've been through. I don't know what you've been through. Everyone's got their own little challenges. Everyone's got their own, things that they've been through or that they're going through. It's tough for me to know what you're going through, but all I can say from my experience is, try something and try everything, whatever you like, just go try it. You're fortunate that as a pharmacist, you've always got a locum shift that you can fall back on. You can pay your bills. You might not be earning, 100,000 a year, but even if you're earning 40, 50,000 pounds a year as a locum, that's way more than what a lot of other people are earning.
So it's the fortunate position to be in.
I think we sometimes underestimate how fortunate we are as pharmacists because we do still get paid very good. I mean, last year I spent a fair bit of time interviewing locums and trying to understand, how much do they earn? Why do they think they earn that much? And what makes them successful at negotiating? Most of them are on easy 80 to 100,000 a year. And I think they, at the end, when I said to them, look, you're actually, compared to other sectors, the professions, it's actually doing really well. Right. And, when you point out these things, even with pharmacy owners, when you sit down with them and we think, you could do, you're actually in a very fortunate position that you've got this pharmacy. You've got a huge amount of data that you're sitting on. There's all these things that you can do to really expand your business. You've got a gold mine, you've got a pharmacy contract. Why aren't you utilizing it? Why aren't you doing more? So I think sometimes when you sit down and explain to someone, look, this is the broader picture, this is where you are. There's so many opportunities there. Is, we all get to the point where we're like, we're overwhelmed or we're just tired of everything of the grind every day.
Yeah.
Take a holiday, go away somewhere for a weekend and think, just
gonna have a reset. Yeah.
Just have a reset. Sometimes it just takes that 1 or 2 days off to completely reset and just put things in perspective. Next week I'll try something else.
And if there's one thing that every local pharmacist should be doing today, what is it?
Join the TPC as a professional member, please.
I'll take that.
That's the only thing I would say, because to be honest, it's your organization.
Yeah.
It's your platform. And this is what I keep saying, it's not mine, it's yours. We built this together to give you guys a voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we want that voice, it's there. Just join.
And the flip side to that question, then let's see if you can answer that as quickly as you answer the first one. What's the one thing that every pharmacy owner should stop doing immediately?
Stop nickel and diming. Stop trying to save the pound here and there on the local rates.
Yeah.
Find, appreciate the pharmacists that you have. You've got, untapped potential there. You've got a contract there that can make you very good money. Work on the business model.
Okay. It's fine. We're drawing to a close now. Is there anything else, anything you want to talk about that we haven't touched upon? Anything you're working on that you want the listeners to know? Anything that you feel will benefit our listeners, or anything you want to put up?
No, I think, like I said, it just, we talk a lot, see on the networks, on social media. And I think if there's one message I want the listeners to go away with, it isn't us versus them, isn't Locum contractors. We are all in it together. We've got to make this work. We've got to stop the brain drain, and we need to figure things out together in a way that benefits both sides. We see the world right now. Everyone's fighting everyone else.
Yeah.
Every time we turn the TV on or go on Twitter and Facebook, there's a war or something happening out there. It doesn't end well if we go into this us versus the mentality.
Yeah.
So we have to change the way we're thinking.
Thank you very much. Just before we wrap up, there's something new we're launching for the listeners, and it's a listener engagement section. So if you're a pharmacy owner, a pharmacist, a pharmacy student, or anybody that is listening to this, and you have any questions or any problems that you're facing in your pharmacy, whether it's a staffing problem, how do you set up private services, or any cash flow headache, please drop your questions in the comment section, or just get in touch with us directly. And what we'll do is we'll put those questions together, and then we'll go away and look for the experts in that field or in that industry, or people that can answer those questions. Tohidul, thank you so much. Thank you very, very much for joining me today. Thank you for sharing your journey. It's been inspiring to hear how advocacy and innovation could go hand in hand. And I think, like I said, the key takeaway message from you today is it's not us versus them. There's more that unites us than divides us. We're all in this together. Thank you so much, Tohidul. To everyone listening, if this episode struck a chord with you, please follow, share on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, and leave a review wherever you're listening to the podcast. If you know anyone who could benefit from listening to this, please share it with them. These actions help more people discover the podcast and the stories that matter. And don't forget, every episode is packed with value. So if you're new here, go back and check out some earlier episodes. Whether you're trying to get your first pharmacy off the ground or you're trying to turn around a struggling one, there's something here for you. And remember, the best prescription for success is resilience. Thank you for listening.